So our first speaker is Ilham Alagi. Ilham is an associate professor in residence at Northwestern University in Qatar. Some of her recent publications include Digital Media and the Socio-Political Metamorphosis in the Arab Region in the Routledge Companion to Global Internet Histories. And Waiting for Spring, Arab Revolution and Change in the International Journal of Communication. Huh?
He's asking to take the mic.
Is that better now? Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, we were reading a long list of publications, well, a few publications here. Finally, Downtime Turns in the Arab Advertising Industry, Strategies of Survival. Anyway, Ilham is going to talk to us now about some business, about startups in the Middle East, online practices and business models. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. I'll take you during this 20 minutes about the promising opportunity of an entrepreneurial economy in the MENA region. I'll talk about the ecosystem of startups and some of the current practices and examples of business models launched by recent startups in the region. This caricature tells the story of startups' struggle to find fundings. Although pitching can be both crucial and painful, it's eased off with a mindset of innovation, creativity, as it's all about ideas and innovation, how their enterprises are expected to change the world. But the promise of innovation and growth is what defines a startup. There's no consensus, in fact, on a definition of a startup. The Webster highlights the novelty of the institution, but there are no metrics, really, of years or level of revenue that normalizes the status of a startup. There is an agreement, though, that when a startup grows, meaning becomes profitable, it moves away from startuphood. In the academic literature, there is a shortfall in entrepreneurship definitions. Scholars that definitions within the entrepreneurship field are both problematic and non-existent. Recent research, not recent, in 1995 research by Dennis and colleagues, write that it's entrepreneurs themselves who determine whether their ventures are startups. A newer research, 2007, by Canadian scholars Diochon and colleagues, tracked nascent entrepreneurships over 4 years and studied what makes them really startups. And they found two key criteria that demarcate a startup from being to becoming a new firm. They are newly operational and they are sustainable. Economists and experts talk about entrepreneurship as enabler of growth and solution to MENA economic problems. And some scholars support the thesis that entrepreneurship has played an important role in facilitating economic growth in emerging economies, as suggested, for instance, by Andrea Kiss and colleagues, research published in the Journal of Business Venturing. In the MENA region, the burgeoning of tech startups has been explained by factors such as the GCC wealth, internet advanced infrastructure in the GCC, buying habits, youth education, liberalization, and the growing group of the Arab youth, both connected and engaged. But infrastructure plays, of course, a big role. And for the sake of time, I won't go through all the numbers, but it's important to remember that the number of internet users is increasing in the region. Broadband connectivity is taking off on smartphones and mobiles. Broadband is becoming more affordable. Users are engaged almost continuously through social networks, and there's a huge consumption of video streaming in the key GCC markets and in the Levant. However, it's not equal. Digital divide is important throughout the region, and of course, this has an impact on entrepreneurship ventures. I would like to highlight here that the biggest jump in internet penetration rate over the last years has been recorded in Palestine and enabled a boom in entrepreneurship with 250 startups formed over the last 3 years. This is also important to note in terms of localization of content and the number of Arabic web pages that is expected to grow 4 to 5 folds in the next 3 years, which speaks to the increase of internet in Arab localized content. And it's the engaged audience that displays the heavy usage of online videos and makes the GCC and its key markets more attractive for startups. The MENA audience connected, engaged, display opportunities for startup and entrepreneurships. The rise of the startup economy could be tracked back to when Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE mainly have started setting up dedicated ICT parks. This ecosystem counts policymakers, investors, entrepreneurs, and incubators and accelerators, but also the government. And the GCC is the most interesting market in the sense to invest in, thanks to enabling policies. In the UAE, for instance, was the first to introduce a seal or certificate to prove that a site is legit and it's safe to use. Besides, government offers several entrepreneurship and funding opportunities, as few of them are mentioned here. But the ecosystem is not only about investors, funding, and seats, it's also about their culture. I'll move this. And so far, cultural factors have slowed down entrepreneurship and are still inhibiting in some cases. First, the economy of the Middle East is based on family culture traditions. 90% of the companies are family-owned businesses. And personal savings and support from family and friends are the primary sources of early-stage funding, as the graph shows here. Only 24% of entrepreneurs have received funding from angel investors. Otherwise, we see personal savings or funding from family and friends. And so far, a Western concept like angel investing does not exist really in the Middle East. Investors are known to be very traditional, very little risk takers, and their mindset is linked to tangible assets and conservative investment with the favor of high return mentality. But the new generation of investors, many of them educated, trained abroad, open to globalization, is considering new ways of doing businesses and are more open to joint ventures. These are only a few that I throw here of the 140 institutions that support entrepreneurship in the region and ensuring the acceleration process of startup projects. The growth stage is the most problematic in the region. Experts agree that startups succeed quite well in collecting initial seeds, but they struggle at the growth stage. In fact, more than 2/3 of startups in the Arab world haven't received follow-up on cash, despite a significant increase in funding these recent years. I wanted here to highlight the growth stage, but for the time, I'll move on. The literature discussed the most popular business models, such as advertising or subscription and affiliate marketing and so on. I will share with you some findings from informants. I talked to people from the industry, entrepreneurs themselves, about their new ventures. So let's talk about, I move here about the gaming. I'm looking at the time. And I'll start with this first example, the Jordanian website. So Arab uprisings have provoked or enabled more artistic production and content production, and satirical programs were kind of a trend here throughout the region. Jordan's Kharabish is an animated and satirical online channel about regional issues. It produces edgy animated and video Arabic content. It also has received a huge success throughout the region. YouTube has partnered with Kharabish and offers a share of the advertising revenues to the channel in order to commercialize itself. With 35 employees, Kharabish generates more than 30% of its revenues from YouTube partnerships, but it also generates revenues from advertising in content and product placement with an important client of list, including Samsung or Pepsi. With the increasing adoption of mobile, also Kharabish generates revenues through application and subscriptions, as well as services offered to companies, but here read more native advertising that I'll talk about. Another venture, Creative Culture Catalysts, also known as 3C, which is a Saudi-based web production house, runs a comedy folks YouTube channel, Telfaz 11. Its most popular show, La Yiktar, or Put a Lid on It, launched in 2010, is also satirical and that has accumulated a huge viewership, as you can see here. This is more, the popularity of these programs come as an alternative to the satellite channel that Saudis themselves, specifically the youth, find disconnected from the reality. And 3C generates revenues from in-content advertising with brand associations such as Unilever, Samsung, BlackBerry, and others. U-Turn is another Saudi-based media company entertainment group established in 2010, also exclusively produces content for YouTube, and their most popular show, Attire, attracted over 66 million views, and it generates revenue from advertising as the main source. 90% of the revenues are from also advertising, and for fifth, which is more product integration. So here read more involvement in the content production along with the brand. So we're not talking about product placement for sample visibility or branding. Music is the second largest media spend in the Middle East, and piracy remains an important problem in the region. Anghami, a music streaming mobile application launched in Lebanon by 2012, has a high base of market reach, and it uses a subscription model, as you can see here. With the subscription, the users can skip advertising and commercial, but also be connected offline. And then Rami has introduced a new payment, which is kind of a new trend, or at least what they call disruptive model, with an association partnership with a mobile operator and what they call the Alpha and Rami deal. The bundle is available on 2 plans, as you can see here with the pricing, but considering that the users complain that the 3G is way too expensive to pay for Lebanese for Anghami subscriptions, the deal makes both the telecom operator and Anghami both happy. But Anghami has to face some competitors very attracted by the Middle East and by the GCC market, like the new entry of Australian startup Guvera to the UAE. Also streaming music, Guvera is ad-supported, but also uses branded content. And they build channels with the types of music that the consumers want. But what they have introduced also as a new or disruptive model is that the audience can select the brands that they want to receive advertising or commercial or content from. So they put the consumer in charge of his own advertising experience. And they also use a premium service based on monthly subscriptions. Launched in 2012, Eureka is an interesting model as it has won several awards as a startup innovations and startup of the year. The mission is to stimulate entrepreneurship in the region by offering platform for crowdsourcing, and based in Dubai, here you don't see, but I wanted to show that some projects, not only they get 100% of funding, but they get overfunding. So it goes beyond what they have asked. And the business model of Eureka is to get 7.25% on all the funds connected. But what's interesting here is that some media companies, they took the same model as, for instance, the startup for movies called Aflamna, or Our Movies. So the same thing for documentaries or movies. They open at the crowdfunding, which is also very new for the region. I wanted to talk a little bit about e-commerce, as it's also very knowing a growth state in the region. But probably I'll stick to media. I'm seeing the time. We don't have much time left. And I'll talk about Diwani, though, instead of e-commerce. And I'm happy to take any question about e-commerce. Diwani is also a media company, and they have introduced a new model, again, where the advertisers take, the consumers or the audience take in control their experience in, with the brands and with commercializations. So the platform uses a sponsorship, but also integrated content, which is, again, the trend, or what we call native advertising, which is kind of, inserted in the content, so you don't really feel that it's about advertising. And the last example for media, which is also a new form that was probably gained after the revolution or after the uprisings, which is civic entrepreneurship. So Baraka Bytes is a new venture in media, and they are specializing in good news. So the founders, they said, we had enough of bad news coming out from the Middle East, so let's only talk about good news. And this is launched by a Syrian founder. It's, as I said, specialized in good news, and the objective for the founders is only to be sustainable. So growth is not the objective, but just to be viable. And the model is mainly based on advertising, but also works with sponsorship, with editorial content and crowdsourced content. And this is basically the same model of the website, popular website, hashtag 18 Days in Egypt. I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's also a venture that memorizes events, photos and videos inherited from the uprisings in the Egyptian revolution. There are so many to talk about. And but basically you can see that advertising content is the major revenue generation model, and the key markets of the UAE, Saudi Arabia, or Egypt. We have only a few minutes left. So part of being a startup is to grow and be profitable, and why not reach an exit similar to the success stories of Maktoub that was bought by Yahoo in 2009, or the very recent Kuwaiti exit by Talabat, which is a Kuwaiti group that was just acquired by German Rocket Internet this summer for $107 million. These examples are what really entrepreneurs aspire to, and this is what keeps really them motivated to gain profitable and run profitable businesses. The change of culture in the region and among investors, and the economic imperatives, as well as the social and the political context, to do better and to generate revenues is really the opportunity now in the region. We haven't really talked about female entrepreneurs in the region, but women account for 35% of all startups in the region. And even last week, the Entrepreneurs Middle East magazine have published coverage on a new trend of married co-founding startups couples, which is the new Arab demographic to watch, the article says. So if it's not really important exits, the other way to help startup and the way they're finding their ways is global partnerships that we are all witnessing. Some of the famous examples are an Egyptian startup, alwafayat.com, that memorized deceased ones and received 100,000 seeds from 500 startup, which is a US-based company that has invested 1.5 million recently in 15 startups. So global partnerships is really the trend that we're witnessing these days. I would like, 1 minute, I would like to finish by saying that really we know very, very little about entrepreneurial phenomena and international entrepreneurships. And there was a recent research in 2012 by Andrea Kiss and her colleagues who examined the phenomena and compared the research done by countries of different regions throughout the world. And they found that the least studied region is the Middle East and North Africa. So I hope we address a bit from this shortage. And thank you very much.
Now, I have the pleasure of introducing Suwon Kim from Korea. She is a professor at the Department of Arabic Interpretation and Translation at Hankook University of Foreign Studies in Korea, where she, I believe, also has a PhD in Arabic translation and, no, it's an MA, and a PhD in International Area Studies from the same university. She also completed her PhD coursework in Arabic literature at the Jordan National University. She's written, well, first, a book, Behavioral Psychology of the Arabs, in 2013, and she also has a couple of articles entitled Framing Arab Islamic Axiology as published in Korean newspapers, and Reporting Frame Analysis on IS, the Islamic State. So, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for
She
introducing me.
will talk on the role of digital media in the development of the Korean wave in the Middle East.
Okay, thank you for introducing me. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and scholars and researchers. And today, I'm Suwon Kim from Hankuk University of Foreign Studies, and I'm come from Korea. And today, I want to talk about the role of digital media upon the development of Korean wave culture in the Middle East. This is kind of not heavy issue, so you can listen to my presentation just easy and comfortable atmosphere. And yes. Have you ever heard a TV program with 90% of TV rating? Yes, 90 means almost everyone watched that TV program, right? And let me introduce the most popular TV program. Yes, this Korean TV drama 대장금 was, yes, oh, you know that, yeah, was broadcasting in Iran, and that TV rating was 86% in nationwide, 86%. And then TV rating was more than 90% in Tehran, which is the capital of Iran. Yes, yes, it's incredible, right? So at that time, it's incredible because at that time we didn't have much relationship between Korea and Iran, and I don't know how Iranian people they like that Korean drama. It was so popular in Korea at that time, but I don't know. Iran is far country from Korea, but actually people liked it, and that drama was so successful in Iran. And IRIB, which is Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting, conducted a survey, and this survey showed that this Korean drama 대장금 was ranked as the most popular drama with 92 satisfaction rate by Iranian people. Wow, it's incredible, right? So probably this is the most popular TV program in the world, probably. Yes, Korean wave culture is suddenly popular in the world. It started in neighboring countries like China and Japan, and it moved to East and Southeast Asia, like Hong Kong, Thailand, and Philippines. And now it reached the Middle East, Latin America, and Europe, all over the world. It's getting more popular, and as you see, it started from Korean drama. Here, I'd like to talk about cultural background on success of Korean wave in the Middle East. There are three things I'd like to stress. Firstly, lack of media contents in the Middle East. Yes, there is lack of their own media contents in the Middle East. They do things, but they very much rely on the foreign programs and media programs. That's the media cultural background in the Middle East at the moment. And they do import foreign programs, but there is restriction. And they have somehow anti-American culture. So import foreign TV program has difficulties. But Korean media programs, Korean TV drama, somehow are acceptable by Korean Middle Eastern people, and it's favorable by them. And I would like to explain why that Korean drama is so popular in the Middle East and why people like it. My research by using content analysis analyzed why. And generally speaking, Korean drama, it's about beautiful story. And it also has some factors about respecting family relationship and respecting Middle Eastern and Arab tradition. And this Korean drama pursues happy future with happy ending story. Not all of the time, but normally the Korean drama exported to the Middle East. And these four things amalgamized together, that make Middle Eastern people happy. And while the imported foreign programs, they are somehow violent and then they have some sexual exposure, but Korean drama touched their heart with a beautiful love storyline, and many people as a family, they sit together and they watch and they enjoy together, regardless of age and sex. So that's why it is so popular. Korean culture is getting a global phenomena and getting popular. Then why? I would just want to talk about the success factors of Korean culture in the Middle East. Firstly, cultural similarity. As I mentioned before in the previous slides, they respect family tradition value. Same in Korea. And still the core value in the society is respected. It's still same. And next one is cultural difference. Certainly, the way they express it different. I mean, you the experts and specialists in the Middle Eastern area. So somehow I can say the Middle Eastern society is closed society. So they expect and they act differently. And Korean culture to the Middle Eastern people, especially young generation, is something they cannot do. But they can enjoy by watching Korean drama and listening Korean music. Especially young generation cannot do that freely in their society, but they can do that by watching and enjoying listening to music, and especially through the digital media these days. The other thing I'd like to talk about is lack of media contents. I just mentioned previous, so I skip it. And next one is Korean government support. Korean government actually support the cultural industry and media industry to export their contents to other countries. Korean government did regulate, and they get rid of the strict regulations to export their contents to other countries. And the other thing is IT development. Rapid development of digital media technology definitely helps the Korean wave culture success. So for instance, once a new Korean song launched in Korea, then in the Middle Eastern, especially young generation, they can watch and they can listen almost in the same time. So IT development is one of the important factors for Korean success culture in the Middle East. Right, once again, if I summarize the Korean culture is popular, why Korean culture is popular in the Middle East, that's not only that the cultural similarity or Korean drama is favorable by Middle Eastern people. The other important reason is about electronic digital media. Electronic digital media is playing huge important role for Middle Eastern people to experience, to have updated and new trend. So they access anytime to programs they like. And they were used to rely on the TV program before, but nowadays they can get more trendy and updated programs through electronic digital media. In other words, certainly, electronic digital media help and boost Korean culture, and Korean wave culture is getting more and more popular in the Middle East. But this is the time that it is required a deeper understanding of Middle East, what they want and what they need, and why do they like it. And to do that, we need to have awareness of cultural difference, why they are crazy about the Korean culture, even though there are cultural difference. But it's not enough. We need to broaden next level, which is cultural competence. The concept of cultural competence should be accepted and should be applied. Then what does cultural competence mean? We need to have ability to be aware of locals' own worldview, how they see that Korean culture and why they like it. And then we need to have the ability to develop skills for communication. We know the local desires and we know the needs and preferences, and we need to develop skills of communication to deliver. And that is cultural competence. And media culture and digital culture contribute significantly for their cultural competence for success of Korean culture in the Middle East. And for the marketers, they need to understand deeply the local people, and they need to find out why they like it. And then that's not enough again. Marketers, they should have the locals' own worldview and have to develop communication skill. And last one they need is to interact effectively. I wanted to know in my research how they enjoy their culture, and then what do they like. As you see in this slide, they loved and media. Actually, media is their favorite culture in the Middle East, and followed by art and sports. Most of you are experts in media industry, so I don't want to just go into, but there are two kinds of media: traditional media, which are radio, newspaper, TV, and then digital media. And of course, the people, they love and prefer digital media, especially young generation, because digital media, it has interactive tool. It is kind of an interactive tool. So, and now the research went into the next level. Respondents are asked what do they like in the media culture in the Middle East. Of course, as you see, they enjoy the TV program still. So still TV program is the number one, their favorite media culture. And next one is digital media. And 1/3 of respondents, they like digital media. And followed by game. And I believe that game users in the Middle East are growing fastly. And respondents are also asked to answer how did they get information about Korea, general Korean information. And Korean wave culture is getting popular in the Middle East. And then I wanted to know where did they get information about Korea. And looking at this graph, they're getting information through digital media with 45%. And next one is traditional media, which is television and radio and newspapers. But even 5 or 10 minutes ago, the people would get information about Korea from television. But nowadays, they would get information gathering through digital media. And I would like to know what is their favorite part, what they like specifically. And interestingly, Korean mobile contents was ranked the most favorite part of Korean culture. So Korean pop music and Korean mobile contents, It's kind of like certainly contribute for Korean wave success. Now what they like is mobile contents. In other words, they are using mobile contents to experience Korean culture, and people listen to music and they watch TV drama through TV before, but nowadays they are using mobile phone like smartphone for watching contents and then listening music and the other playing in the blogs like that. So mobile content is becoming a new type of culture now. In 2008, the Korean drama was extremely popular at the time, and they watched that Korean drama from satellite TV or like that. But in 2015 now, they kind of like watch and get that Korean culture from the digital media and mobile contents. And we asked them also, what do they get their favorite Korean culture information from? Not surprisingly, without doubt, they get favorite Korean culture information from internet. You know, mobile content should be accessed on the internet. So looking at the TV program, it got only 10%. So it means they mainly get information from internet, from online. And we'd like to know also what attracts them to Korean culture. And the respondents can answer 1 to 5. And then 5 means very strongly attracted, and 1 means not at all attracted. As you can see in this slide, people in the Middle East, they are very impressed by Korean digital developed, well-developed contents. They think it's well-developed contents, and that's very unique contents. And the other important thing is that all these contents are well suited for Middle Eastern culture, emotion, and feeling. In other words, they feel comfortable with them because there is no severe violent and sexual exposure and no harsh language. Instead, that provides family-oriented beautiful story. Doesn't matter young and old, or doesn't matter female or male. They can watch and enjoy together. That's the one of the key attraction. And the other important thing is that they are recommended by others they know. Who wants somehow get into the Korean culture, they like it. And they strongly recommend to other. And that person at the time is not interested in Korean culture, but once they experience, they like it. Now we know that what attracts them to Korean culture, but let me explain that how they evaluate Korean culture attractions once they arrive to Korea. Before they come to Korea, as you can see on this graph, blue line, digital media, they like it. But the other cultural attractions such as fashion, history, language, and food were not interested. People, they didn't show interest for these items, but once they arrived and experienced, they like history very much and they want to learn much more about history. They want to learn language and they like to game and they like food and fashion as well. Here is a great opportunity for digital media marketers. They can put these favorite culture contents together into digital media contents. For example, they can promote and illustrate Korean fashion, illustrate through media contents like via mobile application, SNS, and then that things, right? The results indicate that the Middle Eastern people also like game, so developing online game contents based on the social and cultural emotion and preference is quite good for them. So games related to sports could be popular for them to enjoy rather than excessive violent and sexual exposure. Next one. We asked respondents what is required for success of Korean wave marketing in the Middle East. Nearly half of them answered more diplomatic cultural exchange programs are needed. It's quite interesting. They like to have social and cultural contexts and connections in person out of online. Also, the respondents answer that the content should be more variety and more family oriented to Middle Eastern people. What that means is they need that well-developed contents and also variety of contents, which are related to the family culture. In the Middle East, sometimes they want to have human context and relationship. At the moment, Korean wave is well successful and looking good, but they are lack of social and human context. In other words, so far, building relationship through digital media is okay, but that's not enough. They want to build up more actual relationship. It's like social relationship that is actual boost Korean wave culture successfully. And let me talk about the last slide. As you see, this is the legendary Korean drama, 대장금, and the right-hand side of the top, she's the actress of that drama, Lee Young-hae. She was the first actor or actress invited to the new Iranian New Year celebrations. Yes. And the Iranian ambassador said Lee Young-hae is the most beloved Korean star in Iran. She has been a cultural ambassador for the two countries. Yes. People, they love her and they boost Korean culture. Much, much better. So in the future, online market and offline marketing should go together as a package. Main reason they like Korean wave culture is about inspiring them. Once again, young and old and male and female. People in the Middle East are touched by a beautiful love line, love story, human story, and family bonding story, respecting traditional social value. That's why digital media marketing should go with more social and cultural contact in person in the Middle East, like Korean drama actress in Iran. Thank you very much for listening.
We now have Yoshi Chiba, who is a research fellow for the Japanese Society for the Promotion of Science with a PhD from Kyoto University.
Yes.
He's the author of Contemporary Arab Media, from transnational radio to satellite TV, and he's also authored a couple of articles, The Geographic Transformation of Arab Media, The Decline of Offshore Media, and the Rise of Media City, which I think he's going to be talking about in his paper, and a comparative study on the pan-Arab media strategies, the case of Egypt and Saudi Arabia. So at last, I think we're bringing some politics back into the discussion. The title of his paper is Location and Media Production in the Middle East, a case study of media cities.
Thank you very much for your introduction. As the title shows, this presentation is about a media city in the Arab world. This is a table of today's presentation, but because of the time, I skip. At the beginning, I would like to clarify the aim of this presentation. The aim is to consider the relationship between the location and media production in the Arab world more precisely by focusing on free zones called media cities. I would like to demonstrate how media city have contributed to the creation of the multiplicity or diversity in the contemporary Arab broadcasting scene. Since 1990s, since the 1990s, Arab states have been establishing free zones called media cities for private media entities to propel their knowledge-based economy and catch up with global trend. A media city is characterized by certain attractive features such as tax exemption, up-to-date infrastructure, and less interference, less pressure from governments. A number of leading private broadcaster companies put their headquarters and branches in media cities, and media city benefit to new broadcaster too. Media city, which are uniquely developed in the Arab world, became an important location for many broadcasters. Attempt to allot a special location for media entity in the Arab world go back to the 1970s and 1980s. It is said that Jordan is the first Arab country to develop the concept of media city. Jordan Production Company, the predecessor of the current media city in Jordan. was built in 1978, and but it's 1978 and began operating in 1982 as a semi-government entity. But this operation ended because of the financial crisis in 1991. Another attempt is found in Oman, Harey Media Production, which was established in 1986 and it still continues. However, these pioneering attempts are different from contemporary media cities because they did not clearly target private media entities. In this sense, Egyptian Media Production City, EMPC, inaugurated in 1997, is the first media city that clearly declared its ambition to invite private media entities. In 2001, Dubai Media City, DMC, and Jordan Media City, JMC, were inaugurated respectively. The concept of media city later spread throughout the Arab world. According to my account, at present, 10 media cities operate in Egypt, Jordan, and UAE. And in 2014, Tunisia and Morocco announced their respective plans to establish media cities. Even Saudi Arabia, one of the most conservative countries in the Arab world, recently contracted with Arabsat and Mediaspeed company to establish digital satellite TV platform in Riyadh to invite private broadcaster and develop the private media sector in the kingdom. But I'm not confident in whether this attempt in the Saudi Arabia will attract private broadcaster or not. Although political turmoil since the end of 2010 disturbed the emergence of new media cities, the phenomena of the established media city in the Arab world will continue in the long run. I'd like to skip this slide because of the time. Here, for the moment, I'd like to raise 3 questions to make this presentation more clear. First, I'd like to clarify what makes Arab media city different from the rest of the media city in the world. Second, I'd like to reveal what kind of relationship media city have. The third, I'd like to reveal the role of media cities in contemporary Arab broadcasting industries. Here I'd like to put Arab case more wider perspective. The accumulation or convergence of the private media entity is not limited to the Arab world. Many media companies, both software and hardware companies, gather in special zones such as Silicon Valley in the US, Silicon Glen in England, and Zhongguancun in China, and Bangalore in India. As for content-based entities, Hollywood in the US and Bollywood in the India are very famous example of a prime location for the entertainment industry. In Asian context, Korean government embarked on establishing digital media city in 2002. The reason of this convergence was have been explained in terms of the economics, particularly both economic geography and spatial economics offer several reasons for this type of convergence in terms of the cost, synergy, innovation, both path dependency, and other economic factors. In some cases, company voluntarily gather in one places. Otherwise, government allowed special district for private companies with expectation to gain the profit of expanding the private sector and attracting foreign companies. Similarly, Arab states are motivated to set up media city by their expectation to benefit from media liberalization. In other words, through establishing media city and inviting private company, Arab states expect to promote their knowledge-based economy, generate synergy among international industry, and catch up with global trend. In this sense, media city in the Arab world is no doubt an outgrowth or a derivative of globalization. Nevertheless, other factors come into play in the establishment of the media city in the Arab world. Political motivation provides a strong driving force in the construction of a media city. Since the early 1990s, the number of the Arabic satellite channels have dramatically increased. So in other words, the prevalence of satellite TV pose a challenge to the government in terms of controlling citizens' access to non-state-sponsored programs, which sometimes severely criticize government policies. Facing this reality, a number of states started to establish free zones for private broadcasters in order to fence enclose influential ones, so that they try to lessen the political threat instead of offering them special economical benefits. So, regardless of their manifested policy not to interfere with broadcasters located in the media city, there have been several incidents of deprivation of operating licenses, implication of shutting down of the office. Such incidents clearly show that the media city are not a pure project for privatization and democratization in the Arab world, but it is a way to regulate the media in the age of satellite era. In satellite era. In other words, media city in the Arab world, a project of cunning authoritarian government to domesticate the political threat of satellite TVs and media globalization, as well as to gain profit. For time saving, for time, I will skip 2 slides. Then I would like to overview some leading media cities in the Arab world. Here, I would like to pick up 4 media cities in Egypt, Jordan, and UAE, particularly in Dubai. First, I would like to overview the Egyptian case, EMPC, Egyptian Media Production City, abbreviated to EMPC. EMPC envisioned as envisioned as the Hollywood of the Middle East. EMPC was inaugurated in 1997 in the outskirts of Cairo, more precisely in Giza Prefecture. EMPC boasts of the large area containing dozens of studio, outdoor shooting areas, theater, and other necessary facilities. EMPC is the largest media city in the Arab world. This is a photo I took in EMPC. This is a how to say diorama of main building of EMPC. Inside this building, there are a lot of the studio like this, and this is a shooting area. Maybe you can find the pyramid, but to be honest, this is not the real one. This is made of wood, and maybe you can, maybe this is like this. Maybe very thin pyramid. But for the first time I went to EMPC, I misunderstood. Through EMPC, the Egyptian government aimed to showcase the country as the Arab world's most prominent film and broadcasting center. In other words, Egyptian government want to show that Egypt is still Dunya, mother of the world. However, the government policy towards EMPC is full of contradiction. The tendency was implied in the remarks of Safwat Sharif, former information minister in Mubarak era. In an interview, he said like this: "The Egyptian media are not for sale. I'm not in favor of privatizing the media." Although the tone ostensibly changed after his successor emphasized the privatization of Egyptian media, the industry's closed characteristics still persist. Further, the political instability in Egypt since the end of 2010 posed additional difficulty for non-Egyptian broadcasters to utilize EMPC. Thus, regardless of its ambition to be a global media hub, EMPC policy is full of contradiction and could not fully appeal to foreign broadcasters. Compared with EMPC Egyptian one, JMC Jordan Media City, JMC is more consistent in its strategy. JMC was established as a private free zone by Saudi private company, Saudi Arab Media Company, under the auspices of Jordanian government. Compared with other media cities, JMC is much smaller in size. Therefore, many broadcasters locate their office outside of JMC and contract with JMC to uplink their program to the satellite. This is a photo I took in JMC. This is an entrance of JMC, and inside this building there are some studios, but the size of JMC is very small. So many broadcasts such as this is a 7 Star TV, and this is a Majid TV, located outside of the JMC, and uplinked their program to JMC. JMC seems although JMC is a private media city, the project, like other media city, is a product of the governmental policy. King Abdullah II has always given his full support to JMC. Behind his support, of course, was a clear expectation that the JMC will generate jobs and propel the national economy through knowledge-based industry. Furthermore, CEO of JMC previously worked as a top of Jordan Broadcasting Corporation. So JMC seemed to be free. Consequently, regardless of its emphasis as a private entity, JMC maintains a strong relationship with the Jordanian government. JMC seems to be fully aware of its characteristics and advantages. Compared with EMPC Egyptian case, JMC is more open to foreign media entities because it is a private one, and is willing to invite foreign broadcasters. Unlike other media cities in the UAE, JMC is reasonably priced while offering comparatively skilled engineers and technicians. So many casters contracted with JMC enjoy comparatively low cost and employ relatively high skilled staff and quality equipment. So JMC has successfully attracted plenty of foreign broadcasters, as I show you latter part of this presentation. Similar to JMC, media cities in the UAE have a clear vision and consistent strategies. Media cities in the UAE are projects of the Emirates. Like Egypt and Jordan, each Emirate aims to be a regional and global media hub. DMC was inaugurated in 2001. DMC was constructed to help the UAE become a regional and global media hub. DMC stands out among other media cities and has attracted many investors with its up-to-date facilities, attractive location, and capacity to offer skilled technicians. As well, DSC Dubai Studio City was constructed to complement the DMC. At present, many broadcaster and content production companies are hosted not only in DMC but also in DSC. This is a photo of the Dubai Media City, and this is MBC building located in the Dubai Media City, and this is a building in Dubai Studio City. Many broadcasters uses these buildings. I skipped some. So as I show you, each media city has a unique characteristics and adapt different strategies in inviting broadcasters. Particularly, media city in Jordan and Dubai are fully aware of their advantages and seem to take the strategy of differentiation to attract different type of broadcasters. The fact that each media city is different in its characteristic benefit broadcasters. Many broadcasters can choose their location according to the characteristic of the media cities. In order to demonstrate this, from here I would like to focus on the user of media cities. First, I'd like to focus on the user of EMPC, Egyptian Media Production City. According to Merbat Abu Oaf, a professor at the American University in Cairo, EMPC was formed to 18 studio in 2003. However, according to my field research in EMPC in early 2011, I encountered the uprising in Egypt in chance. The number of studios in EMPC increased more than twice, and EMPC studios were occupied by at least 30 channels. 70 studios were occupied by Egyptian channels such as Dream TV, Melody TV, Mazika, and Mehwar, and 13 studios were occupied by non-Egyptian Arabic channels such as MBC, Al-Nas, Al-Baghdadiya. I moved to Jordanian case. In 2004, the number of channels that contracted with JMC was less than 100. But in 2012, the number has increased dramatically to 247 channels whose transmission and retransmission are under the supervision of JMC. Particularly, JMC is in charge of the uplink of 68 channels to the satellite. Most channels that contract with JMC were Arabic channels. However, compared with EMPC, JMC is much more open to non-Jordanian channels. According to my field research, the number of Jordanian channels with uplinked program via JMC was 11 out of the total 68. Most channels are newly established ones, such as Roya TV, Arab Motors TV, 7 Stars TV. Maybe most of the channel you don't know. Most channels are newly established one. Originally, JMC was organized by a Saudi private company and tended to be more open to non-Jordanian entities. As Jordan is politically stable compared with other Arab states, many Arab channels with different nationalities prefer to use JMC as their platform. For example, as of 2015, 10 Algerian TV channels are, according to the JMC website, 10 Algerian TV channels are transmitted from JMC. Further, official Libyan channels recently chose JMC as their main platform for security reasons. Through JMC, Jordan channels as well as other private broadcasters could launch their satellite channels much easier. Finally, I moved to Dubai case. Another 2 minutes. I moved to Dubai case. The strategy of DMC and DSC is to invite a famous broadcaster by offering them what other media city cannot provide. Both DMC and DSC succeeded in attracting plenty of famous broadcasters from inside and outside of the Arab world. According to the Techcom directory, as of 2013, there was 1,400 corporations in DMC and 350 in DSC. Particularly under radio and television station, 26 satellite broadcasters and 23 broadcasters were registered in DMC and DSC, respectively. Thus, at least 49 broadcasters operated satellite channels in DMC and DSC. Those 49 broadcasters comprised 25 Arab and 24 non-Arab broadcasters, including a number of famous broadcasters operating several channels. Example included MBC and Al Majid Network of Saudi Arabia and Spacetoon of Syria, all of which broadcast several channels. Similarly, non-Arab broadcaster, including several global broadcasters. Dubai case, media city in Dubai succeeded in attracting both Arab and non-Arab media cities. Okay, I move to conclusion. Sorry. So I'd like to move to the conclusion. In the beginning, I raised the 3 questions, and this is my conclusion. First question, what makes Arab media city different from the rest of the media city in the world? My answer is, although Arab media city have something in common with media city in other parts of the world, media city in the Arab world are a project of the cunning authoritarian government to domesticate the political threat of the satellite TV and media globalization, as well as to gain profit. Second is, what kind of relation do media city have? My answer is, as evident, competing among Arab media city does not always occur only one level. Media city do not always compete to attract client eating the same pie. Each media city try to differentiate itself conscious with strengths and weakness. Therefore, it is not accurate to say that the contemporary Arab media city is merely a clone of the other. Therefore, it is true that the media city compete and complement each other. The final question is, what role do media city play in contemporary Arab media industries? With the introduction of media city, the barrier to entering the Arab media market was reduced, and many new broadcasters started to enter the market. Therefore, beyond the state original intention to regulate broadcaster, the media city promote broadcasting multiplicity and diversity in contemporary Arab media scene. Sorry for the delay. Thank you for listening.
Okay, well, we've had 3 very interesting papers on the business and economics and political strategies behind media and media cities. Yes, please.
Thank you so much to the 3 presenters. I really enjoyed the presentations. Just very quickly, Ilham, I like the part where you talked about the importance of having also some good news. I think that we've been really saturated with a lot of bad news coming out of the region, and a lot of our talking and writing and presentations and everything have focused naturally on a lot of the disasters and suffering and tension and even when we talk about cyber wars and all of that stuff. So it's good to also see some balance in terms of some of the positive stuff as well, and that has been a tendency. Now people are saying, we want to hear something positive for a change. So I think that might be another line of research moving forward as well when we talk about future prospects, is the possibility of having people try to highlight some of the positive examples and positive things for a change. And Swan Kim, your presentation was a breath of fresh air. I think the whole idea of popular culture and global, really popular culture coming from overseas, from a country as far as Korea, and not just in Iran, by the way, but I heard also in many parts of the Arab world, especially in the Gulf. Now there has been a surge in the popularity of Korean drama and soap operas and popular culture, which indeed is something that deserves further investigation, like you highlighted in your own presentation, taking into account that Iran and Korea are so different, starkly different countries in so many ways. So what does that tell us in terms of the globalization of the media and intercultural communication moving forward? I think it raises a lot of very, very important questions that need to be asked. But it was a breath of fresh air in the sense that we're not talking about bloodshed and tension and killings and refugee crisis and all of that stuff. So that is really a nice change in that respect. But it deserves further analysis and investigation in the future. And finally, Yushi, I liked very much the part at the very end of your presentation when you talked about how the authoritarian governments and regimes can use these types of media cities as a way to domesticate somehow the global influence, right, coming from satellite television and international media, which is very interesting when you think about it, because at the end of the day, how far can they actually go in this direction? When you talk about domestication of global influence like satellite television, can they really succeed to tame some of that influence, to contain it, right, to even try to limit it? That's a very big question that needs to be addressed. There have been attempts in the Arab world to come up with charters in order to regulate satellite television. So that's something that we have to look into much more deeply. But thank you so much for the 3 presentations. Very good. Thanks.
Thank you. I guess I'll give the
machine to the next speaker, Veronica.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Veronica Defner from the Middle East Institute. I would have a question to Elaine. Thank you for the insights about the startups in the Middle East. And Yeah, I would like to ask you. You were talking about the Middle East economies in a very broad sense, so including the GCC economies and the economies of the rest of the MENA region, the rest, yeah. So I was wondering in how far we can compare these, partly really different economies, as we have the rentier societies, economies in the GCC, against the background of economic diversification strategies and the endeavors of the nationalization strategies, as we have very different policies at the moment going on, and different demographic structures also concerning the labor force in terms of nationals and non-nationals. So in the GCC, the question is who is starting or who is running and who is operating the startups. And maybe you could just tell us some points of where you make the comparison, where you see a comparison as fruitful, or where we have to make points of distinction. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe she can hear me without the mic. Yeah? Okay. I try to avoid that. Thank you. Basically, it's within the MENA region, so I'm not talking about the whole Middle East. Israel for itself has a whole dynamic of startups, and they are really ahead of the rest of the Middle East. I'm not talking about Iran, but mainly Middle East, North Africa, the Arab countries in the Arab region. There's definitely a big disparity when we talk about MENA. What the examples that we see in the emergence and the opportunities in the GCC are much, much more positive, active. There's more dynamics in the GCC than, for instance, Tunis or Tunisia or Algeria or the rest of the Arab countries. Basically because of infrastructure. I mean, when we talk about the GCC, it's the internet penetration, it's the facility, it's the broadband, it's the mobile, the smartphones. All these have, energized the e-commerce, startups, entrepreneurship. Not only that, the policies are more enabling. So my colleague here, Yushi, talked about media cities and free zones, and this is where most of the startups in Dubai are happening. In Jordan, this is where more of the startups in Jordan, in the technological park in Jordan, this is where the startups are really taking place. Not only that, the dynamic of the advertising market in itself. Dubai is a hub for advertising. This is almost where all is happening in terms of production, Egypt and Lebanon. And this is where we see, although in Lebanon or in Egypt, we don't have penetration rates as close as Dubai and GCC, but there is a huge advertising market and interest in entrepreneurship, and this is where most of the new media startups burgeoning. So in terms of e-commerce as well, most of the e-commerce sites, where's the market? The market is in Saudi Arabia, most importantly. MasterCard just released a report about e-shopping in Saudi Arabia, for instance, and the Gulf, and 33% of the e-shopping revenues are coming from GCC, I think 14% from North Africa, and about 12% from the Levant. So in terms of number, the GCC market is very interesting, one side. So also I mentioned the initiatives. So all these play together in terms of the GCC, the Gulf, the GCC being a more interesting market for startup, for entrepreneurs, for the government initiatives, infrastructure, ICT, but also for a market where you have a bigger buying power, from the population. It doesn't address the labor. I think part of your question is about the workforce and the migrants. I don't know if you... but
because I totally agree that the Gulf is probably a fantastic consumption market.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is,
Yeah, I mean, another interesting, if I may add, another interesting part of the startup that we're seeing is the localized content. So a lot of startups happening even in Dubai are launched by Syrian, by Egyptian, by Jordanian in the GCC. So this doesn't mean that GCC nationals don't have their share of the pie. One of the review sites, very YAG, what's the name again? I think Yadig or Yadig or something like that with the GCC terminology, which is a review site of companies, brands, government institutions, and so was founded by an Emirati national. So it's a mixture of who is funding those. Rocket Internet, who launched Namshi, is a German group, but they partnered with an Emirati guy to launch the startup. But if we look in terms of numbers, and the dominant, to answer your question, would be Arabs in the GCC.
Another one?
Director on the MEI. Chiba-san, your comment on DMC and various participation from countries, that's very interesting. I noticed India has 5, and Bollywood is actually very active, like Hollywood, but after listening to Professor Suwan, I begin to understand why the Bollywood side is not really in the Middle East. Although I've joint venture with Deepa Mehta on Earth, Fire and Water, which won the Best Foreign Film Oscar nomination 2007. I want to come back to Professor Wan. I think contextually, the Korean influence in the Middle East is maybe 2 generations since 1975, with construction from Saudi, someone, all the way to Libya, man-made river with Tonga, and in Kuwait with Delim, in petrochemicals, in Iraq, in the transmission of electricity, even during the Iraq-Iran war. So it has a two-generation historical background with a very fiscal presence. But my question to you is this. There is something interesting that Korean soft movies and media is popular, and you say content. And content is a big driving force. And the issue here is this. Korea is very Confucianist. Many of these pop, besides the K-pop, the old ones are more historical, but it has a very strong Confucian underpinning. What has Confucius underpinning got in alignment with Islamic thinking? Because this is something very visual, and as Professor Shamir said, Korea is so far away. It's actually not that far away, but there might be more cultural intermix in religious, moral, societal interactions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Thank you for your comment. I think I understand your comment is not question. It's just comment, right?
You made a good presentation.
Thank you very much for more. Okay, for your comment.
Let me quickly ask you a question. In your comparative analysis earlier, if you were comparing these Middle Eastern media places that are supposed to kind of circumscribe people, what would be the Asian parallel?
Asian parallel?
The parallel in Asia to the function of political constriction of the media
that you point out in the Middle East?
In this, sorry, I'm not confident whether my answer is how to say to meet your question. In this presentation, I would like to demonstrate that each state has each intention to how to say to domesticate and lessen the political threat of the satellite TVs. But I would like to demonstrate that but it doesn't work when several countries put together. Sorry, I don't know. I don't say well. I wanted to demonstrate that if each state has each media policy, but when in terms of the Arab media scene, their how to say their strategy doesn't work well. Rather, it's how to say it's generate more threat to the Arab authoritarian regimes. Sorry, I can't say it well. Maybe I would like to answer later. Sorry.
Thank you for your question. And yes, you're definitely right, because today I just talked about Korean wave culture, so-called Hallyu in Chinese. Hallyu, it's Korean wave culture. And it started from China, actually. That's why Chinese people, they call this Korean wave culture as Hallyu. And as you mentioned, actually, before these days, the Hallyu trend, actually in 70s and 80s, when the first oil shock happened, actually, our parents' generation, actually, they went to the Middle Eastern countries like Libya and Iraq and the other countries for kind of like construction industry. So I can say they are the first generation of the Korean wave culture. Of course, they went there for economic purpose, but actually they, how can I say, they, through their diligence, because Korean people actually well known as diligent. So the Middle Eastern people, Arab people, they say, oh, Korean people, they're so diligent and they so work hard. So that's why they express and they spread the Korean culture. So that's why I call them the first generation of Korean culture. And second generation is now the Korean wave culture, which is Korean popular music and then Korean drama and film, so on. And this phenomena is kind of like, I can say that media contents and cultural contents. And you mentioned about Islamic thinking and religious and moral and social and cultural factors. Yes, actually we Korean and Korean government, we were not ready for this sudden Korean wave success, cultural success. Suddenly, we found that, Korean government found that, all of the people, not all of the people, but especially the young generation in the Middle East, they loved Korean culture. They loved Korean pop music. They're getting into that Korean drama and Korean pop stars. So after that, Korean government, they recognized that success of a Korean wave culture and they tried to find the potential and opportunities and possibilities there. So they are now establishing and setting up the regulations and then strategies. It's now ongoing. So the Korean government or even cultural and media industry people, we are not actually thinking about Islamic thinking. But coincidentally, as I told you, the core value in the society, Korean society and the Middle Eastern society are the same. Because Korean people in Korean society, we respect our elders, our parents. And then we respect our family tradition, value. But Arab society and Middle Eastern society, we have the same emotion and feeling almost. So I think that's why my research actually indicates that. So that's why Middle Eastern people, they like it. But strategically at the moment, we or Korean government, we are not, or we don't think about Islamic thinking, strategic. But I think we have to prepare that thing. And somehow in Korean society, at the moment, we have some kind of anti-Islamic culture. That's true. Because in Korean society, there are lots of Christianity. The first religion is Christianity in Korean society. And actually, they are not fond of Islamic culture coming into the Korean society. So this is some kind of like difficulties, but clearly at this moment I can say that Korean government and Korean people, and especially cultural industry, media industry, they're getting and they're establishing that the strategies for the Korean wave culture success in the Middle East and all over the world. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just to one comment and one question. Originally, I'm Tunisian, and I was reading yesterday in the news that Japan has offered to Tunisia 9 TV shows, TV series, which brings us back to politics and the collaboration between the governments. So maybe sometime soon we'll see Japanese programs also popular in North Africa, I don't know. The question I have for Kim is about the sample. I may have missed this in your presentation, but I want to make sure that the respondents of your survey, are they Middle Easterns in Korea, or did you conduct your survey in the Middle East, in Arab countries? Because at some point you talk about their change of culture after they come to Korea and before their perception. So I kind of thought that maybe the sample is Middle Easterns or Arabs or in Middle Easterns, you're talking about Iran. And if so, if the sample was in the Middle Easterns in Korea, do you think that the results of the survey would have changed if you conducted your survey in the Middle East countries?
Thank you for your question. Yes, that's my mistake, because I should talk about the survey, the respondents' demographic profile. Yes, actually, I conducted a survey to the Middle Eastern people living in Korea or visiting in Korea. So yes, the number of respondents was 153, and actually I did this survey last year between October 3rd to October 28th. And then most of the, not most, as long as I know, 75 of 153, they were Saudi Arabian students, actually, because many Saudi Arabian students, they come to Korea for studying in IT industry and technology industry. And the other country profile was kind of Yemen and Egypt and Libya and Iraq and such things. And then the AG profile, AG was in between, of course, 20s and 60, but more than 45% of 30s in their age. And your second question, yes, I guess if I conducted this same survey in the Middle East, I mean the Middle Eastern people living in the Middle East, I guess the result might be different. So this is my kind of like preliminary survey. And then actually it is not easy for me to find the Middle Eastern people living or visiting in Korea still, but probably they are coming more and more because, for example, the medical tourism from UAE, we have a MOU with UAE and will be soon Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and then Qatar as well. So the more and more people, they coming to Korea for medical treatment, but normally they come to Korea with their family, you know, the Middle Eastern, the culture. So sometimes, yes, sorry.
I thank you. I think that
I'm getting glances from the
yes.
chair that we absolutely have to terminate, but I want to thank you.
Okay,
and,
thank you, yes.
And Yoshi for a great session. Thank you very much.